Hi, I'm Naomi Fry of The New Yorker, and this is a podcast about The Doors, one of the greatest American bands of all time, if not, dare I say, the greatest. Not to push it, of course. I'm fully aware not everyone agrees with me. When I was a teen, growing up in the 90s, everyone seemed to love The Doors. It was, in a way, a no-brainer. The decade's nostalgia for the 60s was strong. A still young Gen X adored the kind of unruly rebellion the band was known for. And every girl I was friends with thought Jim Morrison was the hottest man ever. But as the years went on, I started to realize that while my love for The Doors never wavered, I kept meeting people who didn't agree with me exactly. The Doors, they said, were too much, too corny, too self-important, too self-indulgent, too embarrassing. It was the sort of thing that you liked as a teen, but then stopped liking as soon as you started to think of yourself as an adult. Jim Morrison singing about killing his father and fucking his mother while wearing leather pants and no underwear? Come on now. And yet, I kept coming back to The Doors, to their beautiful, eerie music, to their general air of disaffected self-destruction, to Morrison's lyrics and his poetry. So we're going to listen to a lot of Doors together, but just right off the bat, can I just play for you one of my favorite moments of all time? It's from the song Your Lost Little Girl from the album Strange Days. The Doors' second album came out in 1967, and it's just like, listen to Jim's voice coming in. It's like so haunting and spooky and mysterious.
Lost little girl.
I mean, isn't this awesome?
You're lost.
You love that as a 13-year-old, and you love that as a 45-year-old, or at least I do, and maybe you do too. And if you don't yet, maybe you will after listening to this podcast. Jim Morrison said that The Doors' music should be felt rather than analyzed. And over the course of 6 episodes, with the help of a bunch of smart and thoughtful guests, I'll try to be a feeler rather than an analyst. I want us to go back to The Doors together and think not only about what made them a great and important band, but also what the myth around the band can tell us about American culture and about ourselves. I don't know if there's any other group or even piece of our culture that's gone from cool to cringe and maybe back again in a way that The Doors have. I want to find out why.
A lot of people seem to think you're from San Francisco. Is that true?
No, actually, we got together in L.A., but we play in San Francisco a lot.
That's the explanation of why you have that association. Why is so much happening in San Francisco? You figured it out yet?
The West is the best.
All right, fair enough.
This episode, we start where the band started, in mid-1960s Los Angeles. The movies were collapsing, the hippies and youth culture were just starting to take over. And a lot of it was centered on the Sunset Strip, just a few square blocks of clubs and neon. That was becoming a hub for people who believed art and sex and acid might just be the answer to everything. This is where The Doors came in. Jim Morrison, a poet and film student, was the band's lead singer, a Navy brat who'd arrived in town from Florida. Ray Manzarek, a classically trained keyboardist from Chicago, was the organist. To many, his organ is the sound that defines The Doors. And then there were LA natives Robbie Krieger on guitar and John Densmore on drums. There was no bass player. Jim and Ray met at UCLA Film School and started playing in small clubs on the Strip. First the London Fog, then the Whiskey A Go-Go, until they became, with the release of their first self-titled album in 1967, one of the biggest bands in America. They were dark, they were theatrical, they were completely magnetic. Hollywood's house band for the apocalypse. To make sense of the city and that moment, I want to have a conversation with 2 people who know Los Angeles and its mythology. Our first guest is Lili Anolik, who wrote Hollywood's Eve and Didion and Babbitts, 2 books that focused on Eve Babbitt, the writer, artist, and all-around it girl of 1960s Los Angeles. Evie knew everyone. She was frenemies with Joan Didion, friendly with Jim Morrison's girlfriend, Pamela Corson, and she slept with 2 of the 4 members of The Doors. Eve first heard about Jim Morrison when she got a call from her sister from a payphone outside the London fog. The Doors were on stage. Here's what Mirandy Babbitt told Eve.
She'd never seen Jim Morrison perform before, and she just thought he was amazing when she saw him sing. And she called Eve, like from a payphone, and said, "You have to get down to the London fog. It's Edith Piaf with a dick."
That's pretty good.
Yeah, right. Eve wasn't going to resist in any case, but that description was really irresistible. So Evie went down and seduced him that night.
That's a pretty good meet cute, right? Our second guest is John Doe, musician, actor, and co-founder of the legendary LA punk band X. He arrived in LA in the mid-'70s, a decade after the formation of The Doors, and a couple of years after that worked closely with Ray Manzarek, who produced X's first album, which came out in 1980 and was titled Los Angeles. So I see John as a kind of bridge between the LA of The Doors and what came after it. I also see him as a champion of the side of LA that lurks in the shadows, the seedy, the struggling, the dark underneath the California cool. And in The Doors, one of the quintessential California bands, there's still a lot of darkness.
That's why they didn't fit in with the Summer of Love and things like that. I mean, they're the West Coast version of the Velvet Underground, except Jim could sing.
Wow.
Well, I mean, Edith Piaf was a great singer, but she was more of a communicator than she was a singer.
Yeah.
Who cares whether you can sing?
No, it's true.
What are you communicating?
So, Lili Anolik and John Doe. Together, we're going to talk about what LA was really like when The Doors emerged, and why a band like that came from a place like that, and not, say, from New York or San Francisco.
Is everybody in?
This is episode 1.
Is everybody in?
Let's head off to the Sunset Strip, late 1960s.
The ceremony is about to begin.
I'm wondering, Lili, what was it like, do you imagine, for someone like Jim Morrison to enter the LA scene at that point?
Well, Eve's view of the Sunset Strip was like, kind of when she was leaving high school in the early 60s, was that the Sunset Strip was for old people. It was like for...
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that was like where Bing Crosby went. Like it was like old-timey stars. But she found like Jim Morrison supreme as a sex object. She loved how he looked and moved, and how he dressed. But she thought he was corny, that was her feeling. She thought the Doors were corny. But she always connected him with Bing Crosby. She connected him not so much with rock and roll performers, but with more like old-fashioned crooners. And she felt like kind of like Mick Jagger or Bob Dylan would have been influenced by the blues or by folk, and that Jim was really coming out of a romantic poetry kind of tradition. Mm-hmm. And I think also her other thing, she really focused on the fact that he was like into film at UCLA, and she felt nothing was square than the movies. Nothing got things more wrong than the movies.
It's interesting because Los Angeles is an industry town in many ways, but at least thinking about the kind of movies he made at UCLA, these were not movies that were gonna be commercial.
Yeah.
I don't think he was interested in that. They were very sort of marginal, beat influenced and so on. But it's interesting, John, I'm wondering, Lili is saying that the kind of prehistory of the Strip, or prehistory before kind of the later 60s, at least according to Eve Babbitt, was that it was kind of like a corny place for old people to go out or to perform. You arrived in LA in 75? When did you arrive in LA?
End of 76.
The end of 76. What drew you to LA?
Because I just couldn't bear living in the East Coast anymore because it was really negative. And if somebody tried to do something, then somebody else would say, well, somebody else tried to do that and they failed, so you can't do that either.
Yeah.
really sarcastic, really negative. And I lived in Baltimore from like when I was in third grade to when I finished college. Mm-hmm. And I'd been to CBGB's, I'd been to Max's Kansas City, and seen a few bands up in New York, and obviously stuff was pretty well developed by that point. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go someplace else.
Yeah.
And play music. And I was influenced by a lot of writers that came from L.A., like Nathaniel West, and not so much Joan Didion at that point, but
Chandler?
Raymond Chandler and Charles Bukowski, and of course all the California beat poets. And the draw of the Sunset Strip was also big because of like that movie Ride on Sunset Strip and all those sorts of things. I mean, that's when I think it really came into its own. I don't know that it was that well known. I mean, I'm the age that I am. That's when it was like, that was cool. There were bands like Love and Buffalo Springfield and things like that were in L.A. And sure, I guess it was an industry draw, but it was more for the it being wide open. There's always been more freewheeling innovation on the West Coast than I felt like there is in the East Coast, if you want to go West Coast, East Coast. But it doesn't really fucking matter. I mean, it's like you just go where you go and you meet the people you meet, and you're lucky enough if there's a scene that develops, and you can work with those people when you have the opportunity.
Was there a sense when you arrived in LA in the later part of the 70s, John? I mean, it's like a decade after the Doors essentially were playing the Sunset Strip, not just the Doors, the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, Love, as you said, and all of those bands. Was the scene when you came like looking backwards at all towards the world that the Doors were part of, or was it a complete kind of like cut?
Well, I mean, it really wasn't that long, because the Doors. When did the Doors cease to exist? Like 70.
I mean, Morrison.
When did he die?
Morrison
71.
died in 71.
71.
And then they tried to continue a little bit, and then decided not to.
So from 71 to 76.
No time at all. Mm-hmm. No time at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, they had graduated from that, but the whole idea of music, punk rock music, was that was then and this is now. And if you, like, as somebody famously said, if you didn't want to get kicked out of the party, you said you were a new wave band. And if you didn't give a shit, then you said you were a punk rock band. And it was a line that was drawn because they had quickly kind of grabbed the remnants of that old classic rock and roll and said, you don't qualify. You can't come in, for a bunch of different reasons. But we didn't want to play on the Sunset Strip because we couldn't.
When you say you couldn't, what do you mean?
We couldn't get booked. That's
Okay.
why we played in basements on Hollywood Boulevard. That's why we played in people's houses. That's why we played at veteran foreign war halls, or just rented a hall, and then someone would break a bunch of shit and we'd never be able to come back. And I mean, that's why CBGBs existed, is because they couldn't get into the nice place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we didn't really go onto the Sunset Strip till later, maybe 78, 79, when we had already proved ourselves.
I'm wondering actually about this, because as opposed to a place like San Francisco, which was also, of course, not just New York was a major place, but San Francisco, for obviously the hippie movement, was incredibly central in those years. And I always think about, there's like that section of Pamela DeBar's I'm with the band, where she goes, it's 67, and she is, of course, an LA native, a Valley native, and is, out on the Sunset Strip, kind of like fucking and sucking and sort of like having a great time in like the rock scene. and she decides to go to the Be-In in San Francisco to see what's going on, right? By the way, of course, Pamela DeBar's never had sex with Jim Morrison, but made out with him, which she covers in the book. But she goes to San Francisco for the weekend. She hitchhikes, and she is shocked by how dirty and disgusting and lame the hippies are, with their like stringy hair, and the girls not wearing lipstick, and the boys, you know, just like living in communes on the hate and, you know, all of that. And she has zero interest in that. And so I'm wondering, Lili, if you have maybe any insight about kind of like LA versus San Francisco during that time, and why a band like The Doors might have, you know, fit in more with Los Angeles.
Well, one of the few points, in terms of taste or sensibility, one of the few kind of points of commonality between Joan and Eve was their hatred of hippies. Joan had come out with Slouching Toward Bethlehem. That comes out I think the piece comes out in 1967, the book in 1968. And she and Eve meet right after the Monterey Pop Festival. But they both were completely repelled by hippies. And I think the counterculture music scene was obviously huge in Los Angeles, but somehow Hollywood overrides everything. And Hollywood is just sex and spectacle, right? So I feel like the hippie movement, it can't take root in the same way. So obviously I'm on Pamela's side and Eve's side and Joan's side on this. I mean, so in Jim Morrison, kind of as a sex object, we talked about this, is Supreme. He's so great looking, and he dressed great. But I would imagine just truly on the basis of his beauty and his sex, he was a Hollywood figure, you know.
Let's talk a little bit about your relationship with The Doors, right? Like, when you were growing up, John, did you listen to The Doors? Were they influential to you in any way, like before you became an actual musician yourself? Okay.
Yeah, I was learning how to write songs and play music, and when I was probably 14 or 15 when their first record came out. So, yeah.
1967.
They were one of the greatest bands ever. People put them down because there became a sameness in the lyrics, but their songs, their music doesn't sound dated. Jimi Hendrix's music sounds very dated. Any of the other psychedelic or acid rock bands sound dated. Because all they wanted to do is they wanted to be like all of their heroes. They wanted to be like John Lee Hooker. That's all they cared about. All Ray cared about was playing like things that John Coltrane would think was cool. The bass line to Light My Fire, is it Love Supreme?
The Coltrane tune.
It's the same thing. And all John Densmore wanted to do was to play jazz. That's why he plays the way that he did. But they had this magnetic lead singer, and so they went with it. But I think that, of course, I never met Jim Morrison, but yes, I was a big fan, and getting a chance to meet and then work with Ray for 4 records and knowing him for, 20 years maybe.
Was there something in the ethos of The Doors that you feel connected Ray or kind of attracted Ray about punk and about you specifically? Like,
yeah, it was the words. What attracted him is we were talking about the dark side of Los Angeles.
Right.
Anything that people associated Los Angeles with in 1977 was like Farrah Fawcett and all this other glitzy stuff, and they didn't think about Raymond Chandler or Charles Bukowski Los Angeles then had one of the hardest core skid rows that there was.
Yeah.
And nobody had any fucking money.
Yes.
Among our crowd, that's why people could live the way they did.
Yeah.
You could find $50 somehow, because that's what your rent would be, because you had an apartment that was $100 a month, and you probably had a roommate. So that allowed people to be bohemians.
Yeah, I think that's true from what I know and from what you're saying about your time in LA, the kind of rise of punk.
Yeah.
in the late 70s. But I think when I think about the Doors and their kind of relationship to the dark side of California, essentially, or, you know, when I think about it either vis-a-vis San Francisco, not that San Francisco wasn't dark in its own way, but I think San Francisco maybe wanted to deny its darkness, you know, at least earlier on through a kind of like idealism, right? Or a kind of idea of seeking. Whereas the Doors, I think there's something about the Doors, and maybe you guys can tell me if this is something you agree with, that kind of tugs on this.
I think Jim Morrison was, and this is just conjecture, but he was thinking of Oedipus, and he was thinking of Greek tragedies, and which I think attracted Ray, and the two of them together, with Ray being a kind of blues piano player and Jim Morrison also really loving the blues. They were reaching for things. They were trying to find things that were beyond their grasp.
Yeah, but I always feel like when somebody's like really an artist or really good, their antenna, it's not even an intelligence thing so much as an antenna thing, like an intuition.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there was something that the music was tuned into.
What my experience was, which I'm sure was somewhat similar to anybody's, is that if you're in a place where everything is supposed to be beautiful and the weather is nice, and you're living in a shitty apartment that's overrun by bugs and vermin and things like that, and you're in a dark space anyway because your family, or I mean, there was a ton of runaway teenagers that were in our scene, and because they had shitty family lives, and so they just ran away, and they were 16 and 17. So there's nothing that shows you how shitty your life is if the sun is shining and it's 72 degrees, and you're supposed to be happy because everyone believes that you live in Los Angeles, so didn't they just give you a Mercedes-Benz when you moved there? Don't you have a swimming pool? That's what everybody says. You have a swimming pool and you have a hairdresser and you have all these other things. So
It's a perfect encapsulation.
but you ask a question about whether what people thought in the punk rock world about that 60s. It was pretty divided.
Okay.
Like some people thought it was cool because they saw it as being part of Hollywood, and pretty early on people started talking about Graham Parsons and things like that.
As
But the
kind of
Doors
a figure, as a figure to look up.
Yeah. Or just someone who like Jim Morrison did their thing and then passed away early, and it's like, oh, this is mysterious and it's cool, and we're being just self-destructive as well, and we take drugs, so that's cool, right? Whatever.
I mean, that's
and
true,
he died,
though,
and
right?
he died, he died, but I won't.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the Doors were given a pass because of the lyrics, because the music was weird and spooky and was dark.
Yeah.
So they had that on their side, like they're talking about weird stuff and we like to be weird, so they're okay.
Obviously, there are California bands, Los Angeles bands, you know, a band like the Beach Boys, right? Which is more kind of like suggestive of like the beautiful California, you know, the fun and sun California lifestyle. But of course, a band literally connected to Manson, you know, Dennis Wilson's friendship with Manson. And just like the absolute darkness that lay within, but that wasn't articulated necessarily in the music, or not outright, right? Whereas a band like the Doors, I just feel like, don't you think that in some ways part of their attraction is that they were, for an LA band, weirdly overtly dark for that time?
I think that's where that's what initially attracted Ray to us, is because we just did the same thing. We were a band that had something below the surface that wasn't like the Beach Boys, and it was willing to recognize that life is hard, life is complicated, life is a bunch of dark images that make up your life, and we were part of a community, which they were also.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the end, my only friend, the end.
When you think about the narrative of how a band becomes mostly doesn't become successful, or mostly breaks up or doesn't become known, and then the few that actually have staying power, you know, the Doors, 66, play the London Fog for like $5 a night, $10 on the weekend each, then get scouted to play at the Whiskey. The owners wanted to kick them out because they would do something, you know, like Jim would be on acid on stage, or all the girls would come. They had like, that was kind of, I think, their big kind of at least early draw, and kind of swarm the Whiskey and have them kind of booked again. Ultimately, it was tossed out because of the end, the kind of the Oedipal turn, the mother, I want to fuck you. It's like, you're out. This isn't gonna fly. But then ultimately recorded an album for Elektra, which, you know, the Doors break on through with an electrifying album. Interestingly, the first kind of like billboard on the Sunset, the first rock billboard on the Sunset Strip ever. And so, what do you think? I mean,
Is that right?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Early 1967.
No, wait, was that like, had it only been movie
Movie or like
advertisements?
cigarettes, I think, or, you know, whatever else products were being sold.
You know, we were talking about like when they break through. I mean, Hollywood's in the toilet at that time. Like it's not like New Hollywood hasn't broken through yet.
Pre New Hollywood. It's right.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I think that there was also a hole, and I think if you think of Hollywood as, you know, a state of mind as opposed to just the movies, meaning like sex, fantasy, spectacle, right? Like the center of what's hot. Like Jim Morrison is that, right? So that sounds completely right that the Doors would be the first.
That's so smart. I mean, that's really, I didn't think about the relationship between kind of like product, kind of like,
but none of it was calculated.
No.
I don't believe any of it was calculated.
No.
It was.
I don't think it was either.
That's maybe what was from what I understand and what Ray told me is that Jim Morrison was just being Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Ray Manzarek was just being Ray Manzarek, and they were or Robbie or John, and that's what made them all the more attractive, sexier, or just cool. Because they were just out there being weirdos, doing their thing. Yeah, and obviously Jim Morrison seemed to like to toy with people and just see what he could get them to do, and you know that's pretty cool.
Like all true stars.
In a sadistic sort of way.
Yeah.
Like a sadistic
totally.
Sort of way.
It's unfortunately attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lili, you said that Eve found Jim corny and kind of, you know, maybe overly theatrical, over cabaret kind of.
And she was upset that she tried to talk him out of naming the Doors the Doors. She thought the Aldous Huxley reference was painful.
Right.
That's just her opinion. What does she know?
No, yeah, but it is true. It is true. Like, why do you think the reason that so many people dislike the Doors, which I've come across a lot, even some of my good friends who I usually agree with on matters of taste, are like, the Doors suck. Like, it's like, it's corny, it's overly theatrical.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of absolutely uncool, which I disagree with.
No. What I was gonna say, like in defense of Eve, by the end, but her feelings, like I feel like she wrote that great piece for Esquire in '91 when the Oliver Stone movie came out, and I think the great tension of that piece is that the tenderness she feels for him it sneaks up on you, the reader, but I bet it snuck up on her as she wrote it because she also thought he was for real, you know. So I think she also thought he was great.
Embarrassed of himself. Right?
Yeah, she thought all those things. She thought all those things. And I think also like she related to him in funny ways. Like they were both kind of like key figures on the rock and roll scene in different ways. Also, she and Jim were both kind of hardcore drinkers. You know, like he likes scotch. Like they have these things that like for the scene that they were on were not cool, But she thought he was great. He was great. The Doors are great. I mean, if you were going to ask my favorite song, I like People Are Strange,
Interesting.
Good one.
It's a good one, right? And I always love it, too, because it's in the Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk. That's going to be another episode. Now I want to have you on every episode of
yes.
of this.
Because my knowledge is so fucking tiny.
Another episode will be about, the Doors in pop culture. Obviously, the Oliver Stone movie, but then also, Lost Boys and a variety of other mentions.
When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange.
John, do you have any thoughts or any notions about whether Lili mentioned that Eve kind of saw him, associated him with kind of a crooner, a kind of like Sinatra-esque figure. All the other Doors were so steeped in a variety of, whether it's jazz or blues or in Jim, in terms of his musical influences or at least his kind of references or what he was close to, obviously he was the words, he was the poetry, but was he also the music in any sense?
Everybody just does what they can get away with or what draws them to, and he had that range of singing really sweetly and smoothly, but then having this scream that was kind of feral and so forth. But I think that's also what allowed him to be on top 40 radio or FM, which was new at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it made them unique.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a blues-based music, which was just getting into, from the early 60s, getting into the folk world, where they're rediscovering Lightning Hopkins and people like that. Mm-hmm. But they've got this handsome guy that sings really swoony. And
yeah. I mean, he has a beautiful voice. He's kind of a pure front man, right? Which I think links up again to Lili, what you were saying about his kind of not overt or premeditated necessarily in any way, but his connection to Hollywood, to this figure of kind of this is the face, Yeah. And the face quickly, very a generational run of deterioration. I mean, he was still incredibly handsome, but you know what I mean? It's as time kind of it was accelerated. But
yeah. 6 years.
Yeah.
No, it really happens fast.
Yeah.
Gotta hit that gym.
The day destroys the night, night divides the day.
I don't want to keep you for too long, but I guess I'll ask you one last question. Do you still? I mean, John, you left LA, right? You've been living in Austin. Lili, you've lived in LA very briefly, but you're an LA lover. Do you still feel that magic of LA? Is LA still cool to you or interesting or central?
All I do, I feel like every time I go there, I'm trying to jump into a portal to the past. So the new project has me in LA in the 80s and 90s, and in the 30s, the 1930s, 80s, and 90s. I love going backwards. I mean, I like to I'm moonwalking into the future, because I think, John, what you were saying was you were in search of a scene when you got there in 76, and just because we're so online, that kind of the scene that Joan and Eve were on at Franklin Avenue from 76 to 71, those things just aren't around right now. I mean, or they're virtual or whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, LA's less cool to me. I mean, in Hollywood seems like it doesn't exist so much, but I'll always love it, always.
What about
some of the? Well, I mean, at first the disposability of LA really attracted me.
Oh yeah,
because I wanted things that were new. But then seeing all the architecture and being able to go to Schwab's when it was still there, things like that was oh my God. And I went to the Columbia drugstore where drugstore cowboys were first invented.
The best.
Yeah, things like that.
No, and they trash it.
Wonderful.
They junk it.
Well,
they junk it in LA all the time.
Just tear it down. Sure.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible.
But I mean, you could say that about every place. I still enjoy parts of LA. I was really fortunate to get there when I did and I lived there for about 12 years, moved around, ended up in Mount Washington or Highland Park. And at that point, York Boulevard was just like closed down and pawn shops, and now it's the new Melrose and shit like that. It's just
John,
strange.
John, well, maybe what we're talking about is just how geography has disappeared, right? Like the specificity of it's just gone. Like because we live,
I can point to MTV for taking regionalism and just destroying it. Because
Right.
we would play in all these different parts of the country, and there would be this regionalism.
Somebody said something to me so interesting, and they explained to me why Seattle, still in the 90s, had that regionalism, and it was purely an accident of geography that like bands wouldn't go to Seattle because it didn't really make economic sense. Like it just
was harder.
Yeah, it was harder, and so they had to create their own scene. But it's just amazing how those little accidents of history or geography, change everything.
Yep, it's true.
Guys, can I ask you a stupid question? Are the Doors cool?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I mean, I agree.
And they're cool for all the reasons that we just talked about for the last hour. Right? There's a thin line between reaching for something and pretension.
Yeah.
So
Maybe there's no line.
the Doors, I felt like they were interested in finding what is mystical and what is eternal about poetry, about music, about the way that they put their stuff together. So they were striving to find something that was timeless in that way. And so maybe they got a little full of themselves, but that's how you get to a higher place. If you know who William Blake is and you know who Lightning Hopkins is, then, well, I want to be like them. Well, maybe you're being just a white kid pretending. But maybe you also find something that's really unique and really, original.
That thing that you said about New York, why you picked Los Angeles over New York when that was up in the air for you.
Yeah.
You meant basically there was no space in New York and that people were too wised up, right? Like they were just, that's already been tried, right? But I feel like if you're going to be an artist or you're going to actually try, you have to be corny at some level. Or you have to believe, you have to be right?
Yes.
I honestly couldn't agree more.
We end on consensus. How beautiful.
Yes.
A rare moment of consensus. Thanks for listening to Really? The Doors? Our executive producers are Noah Chernin and Jody Avirgan, and Ian Wheeler at Talkhouse. Thanks to Jake Bowman and Keenan Kush for production support. Thanks again to our sponsor, Bootleg. I'm Naomi Fry. You can check out my writing at The New Yorker, and I appear weekly on The New Yorker podcast, Critics at Large, where my co-hosts don't let me go on and on about the Doors. See you next time.
No more money, no more fancy dress. This other kingdom seems by far the best, until its other jaw reveals incest and loose obedience to a vegetable law. I will not go. Prefer a feast of friends to a giant family.